Today we're going to look at some rather interesting new datasheets from the upcoming White Dwarf, including ones for Grukk Face Ripper and the Goff Rokker. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. Today we're back to look at a few more elite White Dwarf datasheets, 3 to be precise: Grukk Face Ripper, his unit of Nobz, and an Orc Goff Rokker. Before anyone gets too excited, be aware that these are narrative datasheets, they're not for match play, so unfortunately they don't come with a points cost and they won't be taking any part in the competitive scene. I still think it's quite a nice touch to give these units datasheets though, as with some reasonable estimations you could potentially include these in more casual games, though obviously I'd typically ask your opponent if it's okay first. So let's take a look at what we've got then, with a look at their rules. So here we have the datasheet for Grukk Face Ripper. In the background, Grukk is every inch a scary orc warboss, earning his moniker the Face Ripper when he killed his previous warboss, Krug the Tyrant. He literally tore his face off with his own power claw, which Grukk later claimed for himself. It's a very scary affair with a buzzsaw as the lower blade. Grukk was the special character who was introduced in the Sanctus Reach campaign, where he led the Red War against many Imperial forces, before being betrayed and supposedly killed by Big Mech Mogrock. It does appear that rumours of his death are much exaggerated, however. In terms of the model, Games Workshop still sells a box set called Grukk's Boss Boys, which contains this unique warboss representing Grukk, and a standard unit of Nobz. He did have his own unique datasheet in 7th edition, and now he has one in 8th, as we see here. Naturally, Grukk Face Ripper is an HQ choice for Codex Orcs, and he's a warboss of the Goff clan. He has a power level of 4, and typically for Games Workshop, power level roughly equals 20 points, so if you did want to include him in a casual game, then somewhere around 80 to 90 points would probably be about right. I feel like he is worth a fair few more points than a warboss with the same gear, but he'd typically be power level 5 if he was 90 points or more, so somewhere around that bracket seems pretty reasonable. In terms of his profile, he has a movement of 5, weapon skill 2+, ballistic skill 5+, strength 6, toughness 5, 7 wounds, 5 attacks, leadership 8 and a 4+ save. So some significant stat improvements on your standard warboss there. He's basically acquired an extra wound and extra attack. In terms of his war gear, he's armed with a combi weapon with a rocket launcher, 2 sluggers, an attack squig, git ripper and stick bombs. The combi weapon is your standard affair. The sluggers will mean he'll just do a little bit more pistol damage in close combat, and the attack squig makes his extra usual couple of extra attacks with strength 4 and AP -1. Git Ripper, however, is his upgraded power claw. It's strength times 2, so it's strength 12, it's AP -4, and it's flat damage 2. Additionally, when resolving an attack with the weapon, you can re-roll the wound roll. Frankly, this is much more of an equivalent of a chain fist than a regular power fist, and being able to re-roll wounds on top of that is pretty sweet. It still doesn't quite shape up to the Killer Claw with its additional damage, but this really is quite a powerful weapon. In addition to his combat prowess, he has the standard Here We Go, Mob Rule, and Daka Daka Daka, and the standard War ability for advancing and charging, and breaking heads for restoring order to nearby unruly mobs. He also has the rule Too Tough for Death, which gives him a couple of extra very nice durability upgrades. He has a 5+ invulnerable save, and each time this model would lose a wound, then a roll of 5+, it's no longer lost. Of course he has a Goff as well, so he'll get extra hits on 6s in close combat, which does mean that he's a lot more fighty in melee, but it means that he is locked to a clan that you might not necessarily want to take for the detachment that you're running. So I'd say that being locked to Goffs is more of a negative than a positive, I'm afraid. Now he also has an interesting warlord trait as well, and that one's Foul Temper, which means that if he loses a wound, then you add 3 to his attacks characteristic. Now this is situational and dependent on your opponent half killing him. If it does happen, then it's a really proportionately decent increase in his fighting ability. This guy will be hitting you with a whopping 9 attacks. Overall, I really think that the rules have done Grukk justice here. He's absolutely murderous in close combat, as you'd expect, and to be honest, if he was costed at somewhere around 80 to 90 points, I'm sure he'd see a lot of play in Goff army lists. I honestly really wish that Games Workshop had included a points cost for him and allowed him in match play, as it would add another interesting unique option to the Goffs clan and give a bit more of an incentive to take them besides Ghazghkull, and I really don't think it's all that unreasonable, seeing as they do sell a model called Grukk Face Ripper on their web store. If you're watching this, people at Games Workshop, please consider including this guy in chapter approved or something. If not, then this would be really cool to see it made official in the next Orc Codex, whenever that might be. Next up, we're moving on to Skrak's Skull-Nobz to represent Grukk's elite guard who accompany him into battle. These guys are your fairly standard unit of Nobz. You can have up to 10 of them, though at base they're surprisingly high power level at power level 8. The Skull-Nobz are fairly similar to your standard issue Nobz, with the exception being that they have weapon skill 2+. They are led by Skrak Head Smasher himself, who has an additional wound and an ability to make some mortal wounds happen on the enemy, and they have the Grukk's Meanest Lads rule, which gives them an extra attack when they're nearby Grukk. They're all armed with sluggers and choppers and can trade them out for Nob weapons from Codex Orcs as per normal, and you can also give Skrak whatever you want as well, and he could certainly be given a Power Claw if you liked. In addition to his standard war gear, Skrak has Skrak's Horned Helmet. This basically gives him one additional attack, which will typically hit on 2s, and if it does hit, then the target suffers 1 mortal wound. So basically, in addition to any damage that the Nobz will be doing, it will typically be causing 1 extra wound on the enemy. Again, they're locked to being the Goff's clan, so they'll be getting extra hits on 6s, and they have the normal Nob special rules, including keeping an order to try and stop some of the boys running away, and also, here we go, Mob Rule and Daka Daka Daka. These guys are also a unique unit, so can't be taken in multiples, and interestingly enough, they are an HQ choice for Codex Orcs, rather than an Elite's choice, which is somewhat unusual for a unit of Nobz. In terms of estimating what their points would be, these guys are power level 8, regular Nobz are power level 7, and regular Nobz are 14 points, so it would be reasonable to estimate that these guys could be anywhere between 15 to 17 points. Again, obviously not meant for match play at this point at least, but that would be roughly where I'd be happy to play them at if I was playing with or against them. Third and finally, we come to the Goff Rokker, who I'm sorry to say that the scan has slightly cut off the role for this guy, so I'm not sure whether he's an HQ or an Elite. I would guess HQ, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that as a minor supporting character, he might be Elite. I guess we'll just have to wait for the release of the White Dwarf in full. Despite in the past being able to buy them in trios, this guy is a single model equipped with a Rocker Shooter, Rocker Chopper, and again he's a unique character, so you can only include 1 in your army. He's power level 4, so roughly the equivalent of somewhere around 80 points. His profile isn't too dissimilar from a Nob Banner Bearer. He's got a movement 5, weapon skill 3+, ballistic skill 5+, strength 5, toughness 4, 4 wounds, 3 attacks, leadership 6, and a 4-up save. That Rocker Shooter is 24-inch range, assault 4, strength 4, AP -1 and damage 1, so not exactly awesome with Orc ballistic skill, but might chip away a few casualties here and there over the course of a game. And that Rocker Chopper is basically like a normal chopper, except it has +1 strength. I guess it probably hurts to be hit over the head with an Orky guitar. It's not really his melee profile that you'd buy him in for though, it's for his music. That is music with a K by the way, because of course it is, it's Orcs. At the start of each battle round, select one type of music for this model to perform until the end of that battle round, and you can either choose Gothic Rock or Heavy Metal. They're both 6-inch aura buffs. The Gothic Rock will give you +1 strength to all Goth units within 6 inches of him, so could be used to get your boys to strength 5 for example, which I think would be pretty powerful against the right targets. And the Heavy Metal is basically a buff to the Goth subculture, which is no mucking about, the one that usually gives you exploding 6s to hit in melee, but this one will give you exploding 5s to hit in melee. Fairly similar to the more Daka stratagem in Daka Daka Daka. If you have a huge horde of Orc boys with strength 4 weapons, then I think that the Gothic Rock's going to be best for the +1 strength. But if you're talking about power claws and things, then I think that typically you're going to get more value out of the exploding 5s rather than 6s for extra hits. Typically power claws don't care too much if they're going from strength 10 to strength 12. Overall, I think that this guy could be a really decent pickup for a Goth army, obviously presuming that you're playing a friendly game and your opponent's happy to use these non-points cost rules, but he seems to be a pretty reasonable force multiplier, allowing you to choose one of 2 powerful buffs each turn, which could make your Goth units even more excessively hitty in close combat, particularly if you're combining it with other buffs, such as a Nob with a War Banner or something. You really would have the potential to be getting an insane amount of strength 5 attacks out of your basic boy squads. So overall, I do really like these rules. They seem really quite well written and fun, flavourful additions to an Orc army. I'd honestly love to see these as actual official rules for Orcs, getting points costs or inclusion in the next codex, or even if just failing that, if they could just add them to the Warhammer Legends options, then at least that'd give people a way to include them in matched games, even if they're not intended for organised play necessarily. Though honestly I don't really see why Grukk couldn't be, as he is sold by Games Workshop. Let me know what you think of these rules down in the comments below, and I'd like to say a special thank you to the person who sent me this on the Auspex Tactics Facebook site. I'll not name you here as I haven't asked you whether or not that's okay, but you very much know who you are, and a massive thank you for that. If you want to keep up to date with the things that I'm posting, I usually do any major announcements on the Auspex Tactics Facebook page, so if you are interested in the channel and don't want to miss anything important, then feel free to give that a like. It is very much a handy thing for the channel. I'd also like to quickly mention the Auspex Tactics Discord server as well. If you'd like to get any hobby advice from a tactics, painting or lore perspective, there's text channels for each of those. And you can also tell me if there's any feedback on the videos or video ideas that you think would be good for me to make. We're also running a painting competition at the moment, which is still going to be accepting submissions over the next month for a chance to win a Primaris character. So if any of that sounds good, then take a look at the Discord and the Facebook. The links are in the description below. In any case, thank you very much for listening. It's been fun to review these new rules. I'll hope to see you guys next time.